It is a fragile peace, but right now Mali is mostly at peace. The investment of training effort by European forces here seems to be paying significant dividends. But there's still a question to be definitively answered about how long that investment will go on. Britain and others, of course, don't want troops here forever, but they won't want to leave too soon and undo their good work in the process. The whole idea of this training is that Mali's own forces are built up. It's not creating the perfect army, but it is strengthening Mali to defend itself so that what happened in the north a year ago doesn't happen again. Already 2 battle groups from this training mission are serving there, and this one will be joining them within the next few months.
D'accord? Ça, s'il bouge, hop, on serre.
A 4th Malian battalion should be heading north next spring, just as the current mandate for the EU training mission runs out. But over the next year, those 4 battalions will need to be relieved. Senior officers here say at the very least they need another year to train 4 more battalions. How much more is there to do before you can say the job for EUTM is actually done?
The job will be done when the Malian forces are conducting operations autonomously and when the structural reform that we're doing is complete. I think this will take some time. It's necessary to put our names to the action for the duration, in the first place, to take an operational view.
To sustain itself for the long term, Mali's army doesn't just need to conduct operations autonomously, it also needs to be able to take on the job being done by British and other European trainers.
In reality, the ideal would be for them to come back to us, or for us to be able to go to them and continue training when they're not on the front line, when they're back in their sort of garrison area or stable areas, to give them that extra bit of polish, maybe another 5 or 6 weeks.
It's clear that Mali has benefited from the work of the EU training mission, but there are perhaps benefits for Britain's armed forces too. Before One Rifles, members of the Royal Marines and the Royal Irish Regiment were here. The Defence Secretary visited to see them at work in May. It's a mission that the Chief of Defence Staff has cited as an example of the future for British forces after more than a decade of constant warfighting.
The predominant lesson learned out here is that we've got to get away from the Afghan temperament, the Afghan mindset, and readjust ourselves to the realities of living in Africa, which is living in difficult conditions, living with the people, learning languages, understanding culture, and getting on with the job.
But you must keep moving. We must keep the soldiers who've worked here have picked up their own lessons to take home and share.
The biggest block I had to get over was the language barrier and working through an interpreter, but actually settled into that really easily, and the interpreters have been really good and really helpful, and they've had some experience with working with the previous battalions.
Are you finding this fulfilling as a soldier?
Yeah, I think when you're not on operations like Afghan or Iraq was, the next role that you do as a soldier is training and helping stabilising countries and things like that, be it your own or another nations, and that's exactly what we're doing here.
The old medical saying, prevention is better than cure, is not a new lesson for Britain's politicians and military leaders, but Mali is perhaps a timely reminder as they look to the future. James Hurst, Forces News, Mali.
Well, the British ambassador to Mali, Dr. Phil Boyle, has been talking to British Forces News about the training mission. James Hurst began by asking him why Britain decided to take part when it could have chosen not to.
I mean, there's a question about can Britain ever leave something entirely to others. We're a permanent member of the Security Council. We do have certain global responsibilities. We also have responsibilities to support our allies, and of course the French are a very big defence ally. But actually, the terrorist problem in the Sahel as an emerging problem did represent a threat, perhaps not directly to the UK mainland, but certainly to British interests in the region, certainly to our allies such as France. And we recognised, as did the other members of the Security Council, that something needed to be done to address terrorism in the Sahel before it became uncontrollable.
Some people will look at the numbers and say, is it a genuine commitment from Britain? You know, 30, 40 personnel, we're half the number of, say, Belgium. Or is it just a token contribution?
It's not a token contribution, it's also not our only contribution. Don't forget, during Operation Serval, the UK provided strategic airlift, we provided air surveillance, We were one of the first member states to offer France any support. In fact, we were the first country to offer France any support. We also support Mali through multilateral development assistance. So there's a lot more than just the EUTM, but actually in terms of our contribution to the EUTM, we may not have the most number of people, but in terms of actual impact on the ground, we are considered one of the best, if not the best, set of trainers in Koulikoro. I think we were punching above our weight, as it were, there.
It is a complicated situation because there's more than just two sides here. There are government forces, there were Tuareg separatists in the north, then you had the Islamist militants. Is there a danger that Britain's involvement is being seen as taking sides in a national dispute?
No, I don't. I wouldn't accept that. I mean, Britain's support to Saval was a counter-terrorism operation. So I think the world has fairly universally agreed that destroying terrorist capability is a good thing to do. So that's not a question of taking sides. In terms of the nationalist agenda, the Tuareg nationalist agenda, the UK has not got involved with that, except to say that we believe there should be a reconciliation process, there should be an inclusive political process, and we encourage Bamako and the MNLA to talk to each other, and we're doing that now along with all of our allies. So that's not taking sides, that's seeking dialogue.
There were concerns in the immediate aftermath of the French and Malian advance north that some of the Tuaregs were having their human rights abused. How much concern has that caused the British government, and is anything being done to address those kind of concerns?
I mean, we have been concerned about these reports. I've heard them as well. The International Criminal Court has actually been to Mali several times, and we always support the International Criminal Court in its work. We monitor Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International reports as well. In addition to military trainers, we also provide training on human rights, international human rights law, on preventing sexual violence, and the UK has been a real leader in that area, across Africa actually, not just in Mali, not least because it's one of the priorities of our Foreign Secretary.